Parents of TikTok, what is the creepiest thing your kid has ever said to you? So this morning, I take my 4-year-old to the doctor. He had an ear infection a couple of weeks ago. We went in for a follow-up. Everything's okay. As we are leaving, we pass a couple of wheelchairs in the lobby. And my 4-year-old looks at them and says, "I've never used a wheelchair." And I say, "Well, your legs work just fine. You don't need a wheelchair." And my 4-year-old says, in his perfectly innocent 4-year-old voice, "After our car accident, I'll need a wheelchair."
So whenever my 15-year-old was about 3 years old, he was sitting over in a corner. He was just kind of playing with himself, and he had his cat over there with him. And I looked at him. I was like, "Buddy, who are you talking to?" And he looked at me and he says, "Grandpa." Well, at that point in his life, he had never met my father or my grandfather because we had just moved back from North Carolina. I said, "Oh yeah?" I said, "Grandpa who?" And my 3-year-old looked at me and says, "Grandpa Toby. He told me to tell you he said hi." I had this boy whenever I was 26. My grandpa Toby died whenever I was 17, and I had never told him about Toby. He was 3. I had no reason to tell him about Toby. But he told me that my grandpa told him to tell me that he loved me. It freaked me out completely.
Years ago, when my oldest son was only 3, he came into my bedroom crying because he was so mad that the boy on the back porch would not let him go outside. He said that every time he tried to open the door, the boy on the back porch would shut it and told him it was too dangerous and he could get hurt and that he needed to come find me. He wanted me to go tell the boy on the back porch to let him go outside. I was panicked on who was on the back porch, so I go with him into the living room, and we had French doors that were glass that you could see all of the back porch at once, and there was no boy out there. I told my son that I didn't see anyone, and he said he's standing right there and he's going like this. Shh. What makes this extra creepy is that about 10 years before we bought our house, a 15-year-old boy passed away in our bathroom. But honestly, it didn't really scare me. It kind of made me feel good that he was watching over my son and keeping him from going outside and getting hurt. We always kept the door locked, but he figured out how to open it that day.
This kid of mine, this one right here, in June of 2018, she just looks at me. She was about 5 years old at the time. Anyway, in June 2018, she looks around and goes, only 2 more Halloweens until the new days come. And I'm like, huh? What does that mean? And she goes, "You'll see. I'll remind you. Halloween 2018. Halloween 2019. COVID hit in November 2019. 2 more Halloweens until the new days come." She predicted COVID and couldn't even give me a real warning.
I think I win this. Last week, my 6-year-old looked at me and said, "Don't worry, Mom. The world is going to end soon, and we're all going to be fine. I'm going to go up first. You'll come up later."
Okay, so my grandpa, which is my daughter's great-grandpa, passed away a few years ago from having a stroke. He lived in BC, we lived in Saskatchewan, so we've only flew out and seen him a couple of times. Once when she was about 4 months old, and the other just over a year when we flew out for Easter to get some generation pictures taken with my dad. She woke up about a month or so ago from sleeping at night, and she goes to me, "Mommy, did great-grandpa die from a head stroke?" He comes and visits me lots during the night. He's a really nice guy. I really miss him. Excuse me? Creepy.
Well, my oldest daughter used to ask me lots of questions when coming home from the daycare. Riding in the car, she'd be like, "Mommy, do you remember this? Do you remember that?" And so one day I tried to catch her, say, "Do you remember when you were in my stomach?" She said, "Yes. It was dark. It was a lot of water. You ate something I didn't like. And I pushed my way out and saw the light." And that day I had took castor oil on the advice of a midwife because I was overdue. And within a couple hours I did go into labor. And when she was born with a patch of gray hair in the beginning at the top. And the doctor said she had been here before. And I have plenty other stories. She used to scare me and freak me out.
So when my youngest son was about maybe 4 or 5 years old, his grandmother had passed away probably about a month prior. Now, she used to wear this god-awful perfume. I hated it. I couldn't stand it, but it was a very distinct smell. And one night before I put him to bed, I went in there and said, "All right, buddy, will you get some sleep? Daddy loves you." And I walked out. About 5-10 minutes later, I hear him in there talking. And so I go back in there and I say, "Hey, buddy, who you talking to?" He said, "Well, I was talking to Mamaw." I was like, "What?" I said, "I was talking to Mamaw. She said she wanted to check on me." I kind of shook it off. I was like, "Okay, buddy, well, you have a good night." And I went back out. As soon as I closed that door, I smelled that perfume. That shit sent chills up my spine.
So y'all know I don't have any kids of my own, but I do be babysitting. So I was keeping this 3-year-old little girl and her younger brother who was 1, and I was giving them a bath upstairs. Well, I had my back turned from the hallway that led into her little brother's room, and the little girl looks at me. She's like looking past me down the hall, and she goes, "Miss Keswick, why did that man just walk in Jack's room?" This was my face when she said that. And I was trying so hard to keep a face like I wasn't scared of shit, but the first thing that popped in my mind was, what fucking man? What fucking man? Like, I was thinking, I don't even know what to do at this point. Like, should I check in the room? Or I just was like, nah, I don't think a man walked in his room. As I'm sitting there inside thinking, like, if there was a man, what the fuck would I actually do? And I walked in the room as slow as shit as I could, and I don't know.
My youngest daughter's 11. At the time, she was 3. We were visiting the area where I grew up. I was giving them a little tour. We went to the graveyard where all my family is buried. And we had a little tour of the graves and said our prayers and plucked the weeds and stuff like that. And I said, "Right, girls, let's go. It's time to go. We're finished." And she was 3 years old, couldn't read at the time, hadn't been there since she was a little tiny baby. And she said, "No, Daddy, I forgot one." I said, "No, that's it now, babe. Let's go. It's time to go." "No, Daddy, there's one more," she said. And she left my grandmother's grave, walked out into the middle aisle, turned right, up 2 sets of graves, turned left, down 2 graves, and sat beside my cousin's headstone. Put her arm up in the headstone and said, "You forgot this one, Daddy." Well, she frightened the living shite out of me.
One of the creepiest things that my kid has ever said to me, the youngest one is typically the most creepy one. I think at the time he was like 4, and he's telling the story of how he came from heaven to earth and the fact that he got to see his life as it unfolded, or before it unfolded, in heaven, right? So he's telling the story. He's talking about all of us at first, and then he goes into his adulthood, telling me what's going to happen. He's talking about his big sister, his big brother, his daddy. And then I realized, like, wait a minute, he ain't mentioned me in a minute. So I asked him, like, "Hey, what about me?" And he says, "Oh, you died about the time I stopped growing." So I'm like, wait, what? He goes, "Yeah, like, you didn't rest enough, you didn't eat good enough, and so, yeah, you died. So don't worry, though, we'll remember you." But anyway, and then he keeps talking like nothing happened. Help me. Oh, that's so cute. You thought I was talking about help me from this? No, baby. If you think that's something that he says, this isn't a one and done thing. This is his life, right? I have 3 kids. All of them do stuff like this. But let's just stick to Kingston. I can make these videos all day. Like, seriously. Of creepy stuff that he says. Okay, for instance, 2.5, about to fall asleep, started telling me about the milkman. The milkman. I said, "What do you mean the milkman?" He says, "The milkman, you know, the guy who comes in the red truck early in the morning from the farm and brings you milk in a glass bottle." I say, King, the milkman, that's not a job that exists anymore." He says, "Sure it does. I remember when I was a little kid." Remember, he's about 2. When I was a little kid and we lived in the big house that was down the street from the farm, the milkman used to come and you remember he drove a red truck, and it was a glass bottle, he put it on the steps every morning. I said, King, we buy milk from the grocery store now. We don't even drink cow's milk, son. You've never had cow's milk a day in your life. He says, "Is it cow's milk? I don't know, but anywho, it's in the glass bottle. You don't know about the milkman?" I said, "Did you watch a show when there was a milkman?" He was like, "No, we know the milkman. He lives down the street." I talked to my mother-in-law. And apparently the family land that they had in North Carolina, way before she was even born, and she's like 75 years old, that the family land was down the street from a dairy farm, and the milkman did drive a red truck. There's no way he could have known that. My husband didn't even know that. There hasn't been a such thing as a milkman in I don't know how many decades. So, yeah, that's my kid. So again, I say, help me.
Okay, so for those of you who know or don't know, we live in a very old house. We live in a house that was built in 1919. So very old. I can tell you about a few occasions. One's happened with my daughter and one's happened with my son. And my son is 6 years old. So it actually just happened. So we were getting ready for bed and my son comes downstairs and he goes, "Hey Mom, there's somebody standing in our bedroom." I go, "What do you mean?" And he's talking about my room. And he goes, "Yeah, it's like a tall guy, but he doesn't look like a person. He looks like a shadow, but not on the wall." When I tell you, I prayed to Jesus real quick. Oh yeah, I got more. It's spooky time. When we moved into this 100-year-old house, my 7-year-old daughter told me, "There's a man and woman who sleep under your bed at night."
Probably the creepiest thing my kids have ever said was when my son was about 2 years old. He was speech delayed, so he did not clearly talk at all. And my ex-husband and I divorced when my son was 11 months old, my daughter was 3. So he went over to his father's house and still does the first, third, and fifth weekend of every month. And he goes over there on weekends. So he has a good relationship with his father. Well, one day he comes home and I go, "Hey, honey, how was your time with your father?" He looks at me in the face and goes, "My father's dead. That man was not my father." I said, "How could that be? You spent all weekend with your father." He's like, "That man was not my father. My father's name was Atheos. He died when I was born." I'm like, "Honey, I can tell you that that man is your father." He looks at me and he goes, "That man was not my father. My father's name is Atheos. He died when I was born." Creeped me out. Gave me chills. It was so creepy. Still really, really creepy.
"Mommy, your dad's here." "You mean your dad?" "No, your dad. My dad's dead."
I was sitting on the couch playing with my grandbaby last weekend. And all of a sudden, the door's behind me. So his head went from the door all the way into our master bedroom. And he looks at my husband. He said, "Papa," he said, "who was that just went in your room?" And then all of a sudden, he looked up like that and followed on into the bathroom. And he said, "Papa, it was a dark figure a dark man just walked in your room." And then he said, "Let me go in here and see who it is." I said, "Sit your butt down. You're not about to go in there and talk to somebody who I can't see. We don't know what it was. We don't know what he saw. But I won't about to find out." No.
Mine can't talk a whole lot yet, but recently he started, like, if we're outside, he'll suddenly turn around towards our house and, like, point at the windows and go, "Mommy, who's that?" He's pointed out his window from the inside and said the same thing, just pointing out to our yard. And he has pointed at random corners of the house and asked, "Who's that?" before, so. He's not even 2 yet.
So the other day I was getting ready to go to work and my daughter started crying and grabbing at me and begged me to pick her up, and she said, "You can't leave, you can't go to work, Papa." And I said, "Why, baby, why can't I go to work?" And she goes, "Because I'm scared." And I said, "What are you scared of?" She said, "I'm scared because of the flashing lights." And I said, "The flashing lights?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm scared because of the flashing lights. You can't go because of the flashing lights." So I didn't go anywhere, and about 20 minutes later she calmed down, and it turns out that there was an accident right over in that same direction of where I was going. Nobody was hurt, luckily, but who knows.